Welcome to SikhCast, brought to you by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Darsnoor Kaur. I'm a graphic designer at SikhRI, and I just want to give a little bit of introduction who I am and why are we doing a podcast on 1984. I'm a 26-year-old born in a Sikh family. I'm originally from India, and I currently live in Canada. Since the past 25 years, I've been very curious about my faith and its history. And 1984, as we all know, has always been I would say, a very sensitive topic. And it's not like if I asked someone from my family, they'd say no, or, they wouldn't tell me, but I just never felt comfortable. When I moved to Canada 2 years ago, I joined SikhRI, and I've met a wonderful team who always been very comfortable and helpful in answering all my questions, no matter how big or small they are. So one day I was just working on graphics for 1984, and I was talking with our art director Amanda, and we were just discussing how we put a lot of posts about remembrance and how things happened, and we never actually looked at the perspective that how we can pick up something positive out of everything that has happened. Not that we're dismissing that remembrance is not important, it is, but we need to also realize that what are we doing with that remembrance, or how is that helping us today. So it just formed into a conversation, and that's how in our next group meeting we talked to our creative director Inni about it, and then she was very kind enough to give us a lot of input, and she was just telling me, like, why don't we do a podcast on it, because if I have so many questions about this topic, I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who have a lot of questions about this. So I would like to introduce Inni now. She's our creative director. She's also an author, poet, and painter as well. Guru Fateh, Inni.
Fateh, Guru Fateh to you, Darsnoor, and Guru Fateh to all our listeners. And I am doing well. I'm excited to do this podcast with you. It'll be rich, it'll be enlightening, I hope. And maybe you get answers to some of your questions, or I leave you with more questions.
Either way, I'm learning a lot. So even if I have more questions, I know I can come back and ask you all those questions.
Yes.
It's always lovely talking to you because I get to learn a lot.
Thank you. You're very kind.
So, Inni, let's start with 1984 as a broader topic. And how did the events that happened impacted you personally? I want to ask.
I think, it's 40 years. So I was I was much younger. I was, as you said in your intro, born in a Sikh family, but I was a cultural Sikh.
Mm-hmm.
What means is that I was really not connected with the faith.
Yeah.
When I was young, there were other priorities. Faith wasn't the most important thing.
Yeah.
But then June 1984 happened, when the Indian Army stormed the Darbar Sahib, the Sri Harmandir Sahib complex. There was pain.
Yeah.
There was a sort of like, what is happening here?
Mm-hmm.
So I was surprised at that because I was not connected. But I obviously at some level we all are connected. And then and the reports from the family and the media were very different. And I bought into the state narrative that the army had to go in, they had to do this, they had to get the so-called terrorists out. And I bought into that narrative. Wasn't comfortable, but I'm living in the States. There's not that much that is coming out. So that was it. But everything changed in November.
Mm-hmm.
In November, when the brutal killings and started to take place, they were beaming on the television. And I was watching them in my home here. And I was struck because the people that were being burnt with the tires around them, and the women who were beating their chests, just seeing their men being burned, those men looked like my father. They looked like my grandfather. Those women looked like my mother and grandmother. So all of a sudden, this became a very different time for me. Like, why are they killing them? Just because they are Sikhs. So that actually shook me more because I saw myself in them.
Yeah.
There was no difference between them being killed and myself. It was like I was there, they were me, I was them. And that really changed me completely. And then I wanted to know everything, what happened, why it happened. And it took me, I would say, it took me a good 15 to 20 years to really understand, because keeping in mind, there was no internet at that time. So the information that you're getting is through books, through little bits and pieces, and everybody has an opinion, but you want to know for yourself.
Yeah.
So I had to form what I know for myself and what I could relate to through listening, through reading, through talking with people, and then coming to an understanding. People say, well, Sikhs had a problem. Well, no, 1947 happened. And I know my grandfather was exiled by British India to Iran because he was fighting for the independence. So you can't tell me that this was because the Sikhs want something. The Sikhs were the ones who fought for the independence. We lost most lives. And things were promised to us.
Yeah.
By the government of India.
Mm-hmm.
And those promises were not kept. And anytime the Sikhs wanted or demanded that they be kept, there seemed to be one crisis after the other. And I think, what happened then in June, it was an escalation.
Yeah.
But you have to understand that there is a figure who has been made a villain in this whole thing. And he is Sant Bhindranwale. So we always, it's like the government needed a villain.
Yeah.
The people needed a villain, and he was that villain. And yet when you look at his life and you listen to his speeches and you read his speeches, it's contrary. This man never said that I want a Khalistan. However, he did say that if we are given it, we are not going to refuse it, like we did in 47, right? So there was what we call I think it was I think if I'm not mistaken, there was an ardas said at Harmandir Sahib. And the ardas was, Bhindranwale, Santji was there with all the Sikh political leaders, and they said that we will not leave the Bar Sahib complex until the Anandpur Sahib resolution is not met.
Yeah.
When an ardas is said, you know what an ardas for a Sikh is, right?
Yeah.
So it's like they have done that.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to understand the other Sikh leaders can renege on that. But knowing the character of Santji, and he would never renege that. That would be going against his character. So he was in the Harmandir Sahib complex, and the pretext was that the army had to go in to remove him and 200 odd of his men. Now, think about it. There's no arrest warrant for him. The police in Amritsar could go in any time if they wanted to arrest him. He was right there. But in 1984, in June, the Prime Minister, who was Indira Gandhi at that time, she sealed the entire state of Punjab. Then she directed the world's second largest army to enter the Harmandir Sahib complex, to capture one man and 200 people? Think about that. It just boggles the mind what can happen. We have troops moving, we have army trucks, we have the helicopters patrolling this area. We have the most elite army units there.
Yeah.
What were they doing over there?
Just for 200 men that are unarmed.
Right.
Which actually makes no sense.
Right. Well, they say they were armed, and when they found the arm, these were, yes, there was ammunition, but very little, because they are defending. What is Harmandir Sahib? That is our home. So we have to understand that they were defending our home. Until we relate to that, we will not be able to understand the depths and the pain and what actually happened. I honestly believe that Indira Gandhi's and the government's true intention was to break the Sikh political spirit. That is why the army focused their attack on Akal Takht Sahib. That's the political center of the Sikhs.
Yeah.
They also simultaneously attacked 100 other gurdwaras in Punjab. Why did they do that? There was nobody there in the 100 gurdwaras. What was it? It was to crush the Sikh morale. They wanted to crush the heartbeat of the Sikhs.
Yeah.
And guess what? The day the army chose to attack, it was the day of Guru Arjan Sahib's martyrdom, Shahidi Gurpurab. Now, this is the Guru who gave us the Guru Granth Sahib, the treasure for the entire world. And on his Shahidi Gurpurab, the army went in. The complex was filled with people because everyone had come to pay their respects. So it's no coincidence that this was done. This was done to inflict maximum casualties.
Yeah.
And the attack began on June 1 and it lasted for 10 days. With the army tanks rolling in, destroying Akal Takht Sahib. The walls of Harmandir Sahib were ridden with bullets. There were even few bullets that were lodged in the Guru Granth Sahib. That's what the army did. You know, there is that library. They first removed whatever they could and carted them away in trucks, army trucks. So it was planned. And then they set fire to the library. Why does an army do that? Because when you want to erase the history of a people, you take away their most precious things. Okay, the hukamnamas of the gurus are there. The beads which are handwritten and ancient are there. They wanted those burnt. And this is basically to remove the Sikhs from their guru.
Yeah.
I could go on because from what I have read, and now the people, and if you read the accounts, or listen actually to the accounts of people, these are the people in the crematoriums who were burning these bodies, right? They said the government gave them liquor because they couldn't, no human being could actually do what they were doing. They said it was an onrush of dead bodies coming to them, and they were just throwing them and burning them. The air in Amritsar, the sky turned orange. There was a stench in the air. So now these people who are now nearing their death, right?
Yeah.
They're thinking about their journey ahead. And they are now telling what actually happened. So what actually happened is far worse.
Yeah.
And, you talked about remembrance. You talked about, this is how we know, is when it takes about 30 to 40 years after something of this nature has happened, that people feel secure, people feel safe to tell what happened. The army, I have to say, when I read this up, I was shocked. The Indian Army used night goggles. at that time, the only army in the world that had these night goggles, these special night goggles, was the American, the CIA.
Oh.
Yeah. And we also know that the British government knew about this attack. So think about it, that we already know two foreign powers, major powers, knew about that something was going on. So this wasn't about one man. This wasn't about 200 people, so-called terrorists. This really was about crushing the Sikhs and the Sikh spirit. So there's no question in my mind about that.
Yeah. I mean, every time I listen to something from that year, I just feel like they're all pieces to a puzzle, because everybody thinks every event, like be in November or July or June, everybody thinks they're like different separate instances and they were coincidence, but in reality they're so well planned that they actually fit like a puzzle piece with each other.
Right. Well, June was, if I look at it from the army standpoint of view, it was well planned. What they didn't realize, they thought that this operation would be done in less than 8 hours. And they were shocked how long it took to get this completed. And that's a tribute.
Mm-hmm.
I look at that as a tribute to the ones who were defending Harmandir Sahib. That for 10 days they were able to withstand the second largest army.
Mm-hmm.
So that part is them. And then what? Now the 100 gurdwaras are attacked in Punjab. There's no reason for that, but that's what the government did. And after June, there was another operation which is not really that well known. And I think we need to talk about it more so people understand the depth of the pain of the people in Punjab.
Yeah.
So it was called Operation Woodrose.
Yeah.
And this was what it was, that the police would move into the villages and take the young Sikh boys and Sikh men who were, as they perceived, Amritdharis, means who had the Sikh identity. And they disappeared. And in some cases, what the army did, they would hang a couple of the boys on the trees in the village to create fear. So think about what is happening in Punjab in June and July, right? There are people now who are witnessing all this. Obviously, there is something happening with the people who want to get justice. Because what are they saying? So this is the atmosphere which is in Punjab among Sikhs, what is happening. Fear, panic, and helplessness to a certain point, because you don't know what is happening.
Yeah.
When young Sikh men and even older men are just picked up and taken, and that's it. They disappear.
Yeah.
It creates a fear. So on October 31st, Indira Gandhi's two bodyguards, Byan Singh and Satwan Singh, these are young men. Obviously, they must have harbored some resentment to the injustice that has been inflicted, particularly with Darbar Sahib and then with Operation Woodrose. And they saw the assassination as a means of seeking justice. For they honestly believed that this was an act of oppression. And this, we can debate whether they were right or wrong, and I'm not even going to go into that, because there is such a thing as justice. Sikhs don't seek revenge, but there's definitely justice.
Yeah.
But what they did, after they shot her, they put their weapons down and they calmly said, "We have done what we had to do Now you do whatever you choose. That shows such clarity and resolve at such a young age. And that's remarkable.
Yeah.
I could say maybe they were inspired by our history because this happened in Jallianwala Bagh, right? When Udham Singh went to get justice right up to England. So this is not a foreign concept in Sikhi. We don't have revenge, but justice, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that happened 31st. She was rushed to the hospital. Even as she's going, there is terror spread on the streets of Delhi. And then the plan which they had, the government, this plan was already in place because the mobs were organized. Kerosene was given to them. They were given lists with names of Sikh homes, and they were given carte blanche. Do whatever you want to create terror. Nobody is going to say anything to you. You have police protection. So the mob just went havoc. And it wasn't just a mob. I mean, these were people. When you have given them money, you have given them liquor, you have given them kerosene and told them go create havoc, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
When 16-year-old boys are raping 50 and 60-year-old women, and these women are telling them, you are like our grandchildren and children, there's something wrong. And this is from the testimony of the women. So it was planned to a T. This scene of the killing of the people in Delhi, burning their businesses, only Sikh, no other businesses got burned. So it's going to be a riot, right? A riot is when there are two sides.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very well planned because how would they know that what house, who's living in what house? And some of those Sikh surnames are also very common. It's not like they're like you can identify, like Singh, a lot of Rajputs have Singh as a surname.
Right. So this already had to take place. It just got, if I can say, preponed.
Yeah.
Because of the assassination.
Yeah.
It was there, and then it spread all over.
Yeah, that's true.
And some states where the chief minister was strong in India, they didn't let that happen, right? The police came out, there was protection.
Mm-hmm.
But in other states, which were aligned with the Congress party,
yeah,
they let it happen.
Yeah.
Because if the center is doing that, then they want to earn what I call brownie points with the center. So who's the casualty? The Sikhs. They're willing to pay that price.
Yeah.
They don't care. This was really to know that, because of your faith, that this was done. It's just not, it just struck a nerve in me.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me come close to my faith, to Sikhi, to know about it, and to talk about it, because nobody wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
And now I remember on the 25th anniversary of 1984, I wrote a poem, I Remember. And no publication wanted to touch it. And every Sikh that I sent it to, my family included, like, why are you going there? It's only going to create trouble. I think that hurt me more.
But that's what I've always thought, that I don't know why, because it was injustice done to you. I know there's fear, but that's what I was trying to say in my intro, that it's a very sensitive topic, and it's not like someone would say no and would not tell me, but it's just something that people are not very comfortable talking about. And if someone else is also doing it, they don't want to go in depths, or I think it's because of the fear, because they just fear that if it's like, if you spark it and maybe something else would happen similar to it, or
right, because there is fear, because just don't talk about it. If something might trigger, it might happen again.
Yeah.
But the point is, if you don't talk about it, right? In fact, if I say that because we didn't talk about it, because not enough people talked about it, what happened in Gujarat? It was the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the government said, oh, nothing happened when we did this to the Sikhs. So, I mean, if we do this to the Muslims in Gujarat.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's still happening. Like, I remember in 2020 when COVID hit, there was so many, and this was they were targeting the Muslim community in Delhi specifically, and they were doing protests and everything in winters, and Delhi winters are not like easy. And that time also, I was like, why would you just focus on one community, be it whoever, even if it's not my community? I don't care, I'm a human. Like, if you're doing that. And they were like putting those water hose, I don't know what's it called, I forgot. They were like there were women protesting, and they were like putting cold water in Delhi winters on them, and they had been protesting since so many days.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, I still get goosebumps when I talk about it, and I don't know why they did that. And then the whole thing with the farmers happened. This all happened during COVID, that too. It was just, yeah, I still don't get it. Like, and that, I think this is the reason why it keeps happening, because people don't talk about it. I get it, like in fear, but I feel like the more you talk about it, the less you take away the power from the fear. Because
Yes.
if you don't talk about it, you're just fueling it more. Like, you're getting more scared and scared.
Right.
So I feel like people should talk about it, even any way possible. It doesn't have to be like you're doing a conversation. You can do it in the form of art or poetry, or any way that makes you feel comfortable. Especially in India and with the government, it's so important to talk about these things.
Now you have to voice your opinion because, you know, if the constituency is blind, then we cannot say anything about the rulers we pick, right? And the rulers are the government.
Yeah.
But if we become blind, why wouldn't they take advantage?
Yeah.
It's given.
And especially like I've always thought about it. Like, there's so much population in India, there is hardly any value for human life. And this has been going on since years. Like, it's not something recent. Like, they do not care how many people, like, it's just because we have so much population, you wouldn't care how many people are dying. That's not a reason to. Yeah, I mean, I'm just shook about the past, but sometimes I just think that the past is actually repeating itself in so many different ways with so many different communities and different areas of India that people don't realize. And also, when you said about that Project Woodrose is something that not a lot of people know about, that's actually true. I was trying to research about it. Even Google does not have information. There are hardly like two or three probably articles or someone who's written their own story on the internet. There's hardly anything about Project Woodrose. Like, people do not know about it.
And that was the one thing that created such terror and fear in the people that this, was part of this huge migration.
Yeah.
Because people wanted to get their children to be safe and that was the first part, was to get them out of India so that they are safe.
Yeah. And why wouldn't they? Like,
yeah.
Still a lot of people are moving out, and anytime I tell people that I wouldn't live in India because there's no value for human life and the conditions, is because of this reason, because they still don't value it. And it's not like I'm trying to run away. It's just I need to be alive to do anything about what's happening there, right? Like, you cannot just stay there. And yeah, it's a whole spiral that I go into, and then it's just something else. So, not to divert, but yeah, as you said, it has affected your actions, and you've written a poem about it. And also, I'm sure you've interviewed a lot of people on these topics.
I don't think I have interviewed anyone. I basically read a lot and listened. I think it's very powerful for me, because
Yeah.
Bhindranwale's speeches were on are now on online, and now even his speeches have been translated into a book. So when I began listening to those speeches and the tone of his voice and the way he spoke, it was contrary to what I had heard people say. And then, he was actually a man. He began, I don't even want to use the word power. He was not nobody appointed him.
Yeah.
He was from the people, right?
Yeah.
So the first group that embraced him were the women in the villages. Why would the women in the villages embrace him? Because he solved their problems.
Yeah.
Then what were they going to him? My husband is on drugs, is on liquor. My children are this. And he was getting Punjab rid of that and bringing them all towards Amrit, towards a Sikhi lifestyle. When I listened to that, and there are videos also of him with these women, and he's talking to them and everything. And you can see in their eyes the way they are looking at him. I feel that by not acknowledging him, I am actually going against those women who had faith in him. I remember one of the videos I saw, and this was a young Hindu girl who had just been married, and she and her father and brother came to Santaji. Now, this is a Hindu girl, right? And he asked, "What is the problem?" And she said that my husband's family is demanding a car. As she's married, she's there.
Yeah.
They're demanding a car, dowry.
Yeah.
He said, "No problem. The car will be delivered." So the car was delivered, and he went there and he put his hand on the husband and said, "Here is your car, and this is my daughter."
Oh.
What does that do to the family there? Do you think they're going to trouble her anymore? It's the way of where he was solving the societal issues. When I say the women of Punjab, I'm saying the women, regardless of whether they were Sikh or Hindu.
Yeah.
They trusted him that he would be able to help them. He would be able to listen to them. In the name of movements, many things happen. But he kept saying, "Don't trust my family. Don't trust anybody. It's just me. I need nothing."
Yeah.
So this whole idea of painting him as a villain, and I think we need to get away from that and really understand the man. And if we understand the man, we will understand actually the depth of deceit of the government of India. Because everything right now, they just put it on him and the terrorists, put it on him and the terrorists. No, it's not that. It's much, much more. It's much deeper. And we need to understand that. And that takes time, right? That takes time because your emotions, your passion, you have to put those inside and start to think, okay, and connect the dots like you said.
Yeah.
It's a puzzle that's fitting now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I like you said, it's just easier to pinpoint someone outside and say they're the villain. I think that's just general human tendency, like to believe that you're doing something wrong and you're in the wrong. It's easier just to pinpoint something outside, be it physical or be it a human or not. So I think they just did that. They just took the easy way out and they just said that this is the reason why we're doing all of this.
Right.
Do you think for people like me who have not experienced these events or who've not been close to these events when they happen or have seen them firsthand, understanding the past will benefit us or the generation coming up?
Well, people like you, individuals who haven't experienced past tragedies, especially at this one firsthand. I didn't also. I wasn't there, but I witnessed. I saw on television, I read, right? It's really important for the history because when you know your history and your understanding, it actually fosters empathy.
Mm-hmm.
You become more compassionate. It provides lessons to learn from.
Yeah.
And it preserves our cultural memory. And it inspires activism.
Yeah.
It shapes our values. It promotes meaningful dialogue. And it becomes like a collective responsibility. It's no longer theirs, it's ours.
Mm-hmm.
So, how does from theirs become ours? And every generation needs to own it, that it's ours. We are the future, and we want to contribute to make a positive societal change. We don't want this to happen again. What do we need to do? Right? But to be able to do that, you have to know the past, you have to know your history. But it's really from, that angle.
Yeah. I get where you're coming from, and yeah, like where you're coming from and what you're trying to say, but I feel like it is important, and I have learned a lot and I am learning a lot, but then you need to be that curious also to actually want to learn.
That's their journey.
Yeah, that's their journey. I agree.
We at SikhRI have to put out the information, right?
Yeah.
And put it out in the best way we can. And then it's up to every individual whether they want to take it or not.
Yeah. That's what I actually love about SikhRI. That everything is just laid out in the open, and then it's up to you how much you want to take in, how you want to take in, however way you want to move forward with it.
I think for 1984, I think our approach is to make the remembrance not just retelling of history, but make it like a living narrative that speaks to the shared human experience, so that we all become aware, fostering awareness and understanding among individuals from diverse backgrounds, because we are one people.
Yeah.
Right? If this happened to the Sikhs, this could happen to this happens to multiple communities.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Yeah.
It's not any different. So the empathy and everything, that it is that collective consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Our idea, at SikhRI, is really to raise the collective consciousness.
Yeah.
And you are a big part of it by preparing the graphics and, and all that, and all the posts, so that people can learn.
Yeah.
If they so choose to.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy being a part of this community, especially because it has actually opened up a lot of new learnings and areas for me, which I did not know existed before. And as we know, you're a poet and an artist. Do you think this is like having an artistic expression? It actually helps to contribute into the remembrance and understanding of historical events. Do you think that taking an artistical way is better than just talking about it, or how videos or something normal?
I don't want to say it better. It's a different way, because we all learn, we all are pulled in different ways, right? For some people, video is very important. For some people, book is very important. For some people, a painting moves them, a poem moves them. So artistic expressions, particularly poetry and the visual arts, these are really important tools that they extend beyond mere aesthetics.
Yeah.
They are actually, if you look at it, they are vehicles for advocacy. They embody messages that resonate across time, and art and poetry crosses all boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because poetry moves you in different ways. Art speaks in a very different way. I know for the 1984, SikhRI has created this logo.
Yeah.
Right? The team is diverse, right? All of you graphic designers. What some of the team members, when they saw the logo and the way they expressed it, it brought me to tears, because I didn't see that. But it resonated with them. It told a story for them.
Yeah.
So art is important because it people look at it through their lens.
Yeah.
And when they can relate to that piece of art, they can relate to that story. they can relate to that human experience.
Yeah.
But you're an artist.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, me being an artist and designer, I feel it lets me let out my inner thoughts, but it also sometimes helps the other person, like you said with that logo. I remember that meeting. Sometimes a design or just a simple image touches a heartstring that you don't know when you're making it. When you're in the process, you're so in deep with it, you even don't even think about those things. And I didn't make the logo, someone else did. But when probably he was making it, he wasn't thinking how it would connect with the other team members, and it actually did. And you actually cried, and we saw that. Yeah, but no, sometimes I feel like it just doesn't help the artist to let their inner thoughts out, but it sometimes just opens a whole new world for the people who are looking at it or hearing it or reading it, which helps the other person move and learn things in a different way. So I feel actually art is a very good, or poetry or anything in a visual perspective is a very good to have conversations about such topics, especially because this way it's you doing you, like you were putting everything onto paper however you want to do it. And because not everybody is very comfortable talking about their fears or their traumas, so I feel like this is actually a very good medium to use.
Absolutely. I mean, I've painted in 1984 two paintings, both hang in my home. I've written, poems about it. It's just what moves you, because sometimes the emotion is that you don't want too many words, but you want that feeling to flow through. And it's that feeling that moves. So I know the poem I remember has been very graciously and lovingly received by the community. I am in awe of how generous the community has been. But it was a poem which I wrote on the 25th anniversary. It was from the heart. But poetry is from the heart. If it's from the head, it's not going to move you. It was from the heart, and it moved the people because probably that's exactly how they felt. And it was just a story that I was telling through my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what sometimes when you're in the process, you don't realize how moving that piece can be until other people see it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
When we started this podcast or before, when we were thinking about it and we were just questioning why remembrances, why do we have to always remembrance? Now I understand why it's such a huge part, because I feel like remembrance alone does not help us, but it's a starting point, and it's so important because until we start talking about it, like we discussed earlier, we're not trying, like it's not helping anybody, it's just repeating it and we're just fueling the fear. And I feel like this is like the first step where we start talking about it. I feel like the second step after remembrance that we need to take, and which we've already started, and I hope other people follow in some way that they start talking about it, however small or big they can. And I feel like when they do, and that's how I think remembrance is just how we're trying to help people heal, because that's how, if they hear us and they feel some comfort from this conversation, they'd probably feel at ease and try to have their own conversations about these things.
It's important that, people have conversations with their families.
Yeah.
There is not one, I doubt if there is one Sikh family that has not been touched by 1984.
Yeah.
So it's up to the next generations to find out their history. Oral history is so important. Written history is so important.
Yeah.
So for those out there, my request would be record any of your family members who were there at that time, who experienced, and because this is for the collective memory, this is for the panth, right? Our stories. Otherwise, we won't have this. Generations later will say, I don't think it happened. What we are doing is creating that archive for them. No, it happened. We want to preserve it. We need to know our history. We still remember the Ghalugharas, right, in our ardas. So that's our history.
Yeah.
So why would we not do this as well?
Yes. This has this has been a very interesting conversation as usual, and I've learned a lot, and I think I'm a little more confident talking to my family about it and maybe understanding what they went through, because I have not had this conversation with them in depth ever. And I think I will try and do that now.
That is the first step, Darsnoor. I'm looking forward to the next conversation with you, whether it's a podcast or not, I'm not saying, but I would love to know how that went with your parents
Yeah.
and your grandparents.
I have actually another question. Did you ever talk to your parents or grandparents about the events?
No, I spoke to because my parents were in Kuwait.
Oh, okay.
I was in the US. My parents were in Kuwait. My mother's families were in India. My Masi was in India, in Delhi at that time, and that. But also keep in mind, I was also young.
Yeah.
I didn't go back to talk about it. But in 86, 1986, it was June 1986, I was in Delhi with my mother at my Masi's house. And it was it was my mother, myself, my Masi, and my Biji, my grandmother. And around 9:30, they were banging, lots of banging on the door. And the neighbors, our Hindu neighbors, had come over and said, "We've heard that the mob is coming and they're coming to burn Sikh homes." This is in June 86.
Oh.
Obviously, there was panic. And they said, we don't know whether we'll be able to protect the house, but we need all of you to come. So they were like 4 or 5 neighbors, and we all got scattered. I ended up being with my grandmother. When there is chaos happening, you just don't know where and I'm young.
Yeah.
My 20s, early 20s. And all I know is we get taken into their home, and we go to the back room of their house, and they turn on the lights like a storeroom, and they move some Godrej cupboards in front, and they put my grandmother and myself behind, and they turn off the light, and they leave. They said, just stay here. So my grandmother is saying Sukhmani Sahib Path. She's praying constantly.
Yeah.
I think, in a state of shock. I have no idea what happened. It's a blur. And the next thing I know is my grandmother taking out this big dagger, like chaku, you have to, from her black handbag. And I look at her, and she's got some gold in there. And she looks at me, and she says in Punjabi, she said, "O darwaza khulega, if that door opens. Pelle main tenu marangi, fir aap chaku marangi. That first I will put the knife in you, and then I'll kill myself." And that was the end of the conversation. I remember it so clearly. Nothing happened that night. And the next morning we regrouped, we went home. And my mother, she just said, "You're a liability. Tu parai hegi hai," because I was married. "You need to leave." I don't know how she arranged it. And I left by the 5 o'clock flight to Bombay.
Yeah.
I never spoke about this for over 25 years. I didn't tell a soul. Not one human being knew that this had happened to me. And that's what trauma does.
Yeah.
Nothing happened, but obviously something happened.
Yeah.
It took me years to forgive myself that what a daughter I am, right? I've left my mother. I don't know what was going to happen the next day. I left my mother. That was something that I really had to work with. And this is what it is. It is when people say, "How do you Why couldn't you think? Why don't you? You can't think, actually, because you're just carried away. And that was the first time I told my mother I didn't feel that I had left you when I got married. But when you said to me, "Tu parai hai," you are a liability. If something happens to you, what will we tell your in-laws? That crushed me. I said, "I'm no longer yours." And she said, "No, you have to go." So if you look at it culturally, the daughter thing, the marriage thing, it was a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
And that's why I never told anyone. I had to deal with it on my own terms. I had to come to it. I had to speak to my mother. I think around on the 26th, so it's the 27th anniversary, I spoke to my mother about it. Because I had the language at that time. Because at that time, before that, I didn't know what I was feeling.
Yeah.
By that time, I knew what trauma was. I knew what had happened.
Yeah.
And both of us just howled. And I think that for me was closure. Just for me to be able to apologize, acknowledge, and do everything with my mother was critical. And my mother kept saying, "I did this to you. It was so quick." And it was just, there are some moments in your life that are those healing moments. That was mine. 84 has multiple levels for me, the dimensions. And I can tell you that my father still doesn't talk about it. And I mean, he loves every post of mine on Facebook when I post. But when I put anything on 84, he just won't touch it. And he'll keep saying to me, "Why do you do that?"
I feel because you worked on your trauma, a lot of people haven't. A lot of people are very scared to face the trauma still. And we think that some things, some like that sentence your mother said to you, you probably at that time didn't think about it, but you did think about it later because subconsciously it did affect you. And it takes a lot of courage for someone to face their traumas.
But I didn't even have the language, right, of trauma. It came much later, after I had read, after I had talked. In fact, it was when there's a professor, Shruti Dev, who came to interview me, and she was actually the first person I told. And I was, tears were flowing. And I said, "Shruti, tell me, what is this?" Nothing happened. And she was the first one who said, "Inni, you went through trauma."
Yeah.
And it clicked. Until then, I didn't know.
Because it wasn't a small thing. Even though you were safe and everybody was safe, that's why probably you didn't think about it because everybody was okay. Maybe if God forbid something happened, then you'd get into the details.
Yeah.
But because nothing happened, so you never thought about it like that. And that's a lot of things what people are going through right now. A lot of people went back through like situations like this back then and they didn't think about it. I just hope that your story, which is, I don't know how you've been doing everything you've been doing, I feel that I hope that this helps people acknowledge their traumas because that would be the first step for them to move ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a plan to tell you this, but it just...
Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to share something like that on a platform like this. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Just know.
I just hope this whole podcast helps someone, and we're already doing the remembrance part, and SikhRI is gonna continue doing that. And by the looks of it, we're doing a good job with the remembrance. I hope that people move ahead and they actually try to think about their past and they start talking about it in whatever way they can.
We can only do the best. We just put it out there, and then we're not attached to it. And then it is up to them. So that's the beauty, is we love what we do, but then once it leaves our hands, it's no longer ours. It belongs to the people.
Well, thank you so much, Inni, for everything you shared and for creating such a safe space at SikhRI, especially for me, because I have asked a lot of questions and I've learned a lot about my faith, which I did not do before. And I'm very grateful for that. And do you want to share anything before we sign off?
It's a pleasure having you at SikhRI and each one of us, because each one of us brings a different perspective. The questions each one asks are different. We all learn, we all grow, and I'm glad you feel that SikhRI is a safe space, because that's what we try to create, because that's the best work comes out when people feel safe to be able to ask anything and not fear. Right? Now, the only thing that I would ask, which I've already done before, that if there's anybody out there who hasn't recorded their family member, to please do so. It's really important. We need all the narratives we can get for 1984. And if you are so moved, paint, write, do whatever it is, sing, particularly this year, because it is the 40th, to create that consciousness. So thank you, Darsnoor, for having me, for hosting this. I know this was your first podcast. You did a wonderful job. You did a marvelous job.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
You were listening to SikhCast by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.